Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Recovery Zone. I want to thank everybody for their continued support. And like I said in the pilot episode, it's important that we cover all aspects. Everybody's recovery is going to be different. And in recovery, we have a saying that states, take what you need and leave the rest. So I'm hoping today that you connect with what we're saying, and you can, feedback is always welcomed. And we encourage everybody to subscribe to the Recovery Zone. So today I have an amazing guest, and I'm very privileged to have him and to welcome him to the Recovery Zone family. This is Gregg Champion, and he is from Startup Recovery. And I welcome him. And hello, Gregg. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Christine, for having me on your podcast. The Recovery Zone, I think you covered it. I think there's all different versions of recovery. I always say this, I said, for me, recovery is like chocolate chip cookies.
Okay.
If you were going to make chocolate chip cookies, you might start with milk, chips, and sugar, right? And I may start with flour, sugar, and, eggs, right? But eventually all the ingredients goes in and you get recovery and I get recovery. You get chocolate chip cookies and I get chocolate chip cookies. And so that's kind of way I've always pictured recovery. And that's why I like your title of your podcast, The Recovery Zone, because it covers everything.
Right. And, the mixture is the education and the fellowship that we also have in recovery is vital. We make that connection. We learn that we are not alone, that there are others out there that think and feel the same way we do. And we're not, I don't know about you, but I felt like I was beamed on this planet down. And I felt like, I was just like nobody else possibly could think the way I do, or feel the way I do. And I felt so alone until I went into treatment. And, you have to be willing when you get into treatment, though. You have to be open. We call it the how and the who, honesty, open-minded, and willingness. We have to have that in order to receive, sobriety. So I want to ask, can you tell our listeners about your background?
Sure. Well, before I do, I just love that you touched on willingness. I just recently celebrated 26 years of sobriety.
Wow.
And when someone says to me, how do you get 26 years? I said, I've remained willing to be willing. And so if you have a tool for me or one of your listeners has a tool for me, I'm going to try it out at least once, because you want to know why? When I was drinking and using, I was willing to try one of those out at least once, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And so in recovery, I think one of my main mantras is remaining willing to be willing. And so in terms of my background, do you want me to dive into my story? Would you like me to tell me how I became a member of a 12-step group? What works for you?
I really think our listeners like to hear the story, because I really think they would connect with your journey and they might get something out of that, and it might be a part of their journey.
Good,
so
wonderful.
You're going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So really, I'll just start here. So. It all started back when I was 4.5 years old. My father was killed in a drunk-on-drunk car crash.
I'm so sorry.
And what I can tell you, Christine, is the very next day I felt different. I felt that, that I didn't have a dad. There was only one car in the garage now, only one income. I certainly didn't have a baseball coach, like some of the other dads were. And the way that ism showed up for me at 4.5 was in a couple ways. One is that I had a pretty high IQ and I got good grades. So I was going to show you through getting straight A's that I was just as equal as you. Number two, on the athletic field, I was the fastest kid in my class. And I was going to show you that through athletics, I was going to be be equal to you. But the last one, and this is the scary one, is I used violence. I was a bully. And when you didn't accept me for the first two, I punched you in the nose to show you the third one. And I did that. And that was me being an alcoholic before I took my first drink.
Right.
And so I do feel that a lot of what we do as addicts and alcoholics has to do with some sort of childhood trauma, drama, or pain, right? That we don't know what to do with. Because like you said earlier, I couldn't share that. Who am I going to talk to about that? You know, back in the 70s and 80s, no kids were going to children's therapists. You know, there was no Alateen. There was no group setting to allow a 5-year-old to share that kind of pain.
Right.
And what I can say is that, you know, my mom did remarry when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
She married a World War II vet. He was there on D-Day. He used the GI Bill to get to Northwestern. And when he married my mother, he taught me some good old school values, how to tie a tie, how to shape my face, and how to open doors for ladies, you know, old school gentleman things. And the other thing, the real gift he brought into the house was 17 years of AA sobriety.
Wow.
And so my life did change. I got a quality man in my life. But what happened was the ism was already there. My father, through genes, was an alcoholic, right? I used violence, but then all of a sudden around 12 or 13, like many of us, there's some marijuana, there's some booze, there's some cocaine. And I grew up in San Diego next to Tijuana. And so I began to go to cross the border at 15, 16, 17 years old and act like an adult, you know. And went to a wonderful college, perfect for drug addicts and alcoholics, Arizona State University, you know, which has a fantastic reputation now. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was Playboy's #1 party school. And, you know, and I went there because I was there with people like you and me. You know, when we're drinking and using, I found my tribe. And then where it got really scary, Christine, my story was when I got out into the real world. And I took my alcoholism out there. And guess what? Bosses don't like when you show up to work hungover. Girlfriends don't like that you don't come home at night. You know, your parents don't appreciate when you come home to Christmas on December 27th, right? And so I was not showing up in a human form. I was an animal. I did a lot of drugs. I did a lot of drinking. And the way it showed up for me in this math problem was I got arrested 8 times in 2 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And every time I got arrested, guess what was the common denominator? Drugs and alcohol. Right?
Alcohol
drugs and alcohol.
Were with you too.
And my arrest showed up in 2 DUI charges, showed up in a couple assault charges. Christine, I even got arrested twice in 24 hours in Mardi Gras. And here's the sick thinking. I went up to this big Irish cop on Bourbon Street and I said, hey, I need to know the rules of this place. He goes, don't piss in my streets and don't fight in my streets. So Christine, what 2 things did I get arrested for?
Probably
pissing in the streets, pissing in the streets and fighting in the streets. So even with the rules, like I'm a great rule breaker. When I drink and use, I'm a great rule breaker. And then all of a sudden it escalated and I began to find lower companions. My high school friends had left me. My college friends had left me. He said, you're an animal. We don't want anything to do with you. And so there I was alone, but then I found lower companions. And these lower companions said, hey, we have some good marijuana down here in Tijuana. And I know you know a lot of people on the East Coast because of the college you went to. Why don't we start doing some drug deals from San Diego to the East Coast? And guess what? I love shortcuts. Wait, I get to be rich, famous drug dealer? All right, I'll take that story because that's fantasy. That's a fantasy. And so what I began to do was do that kind of entrepreneurial programming. And very shortly after that, I got busted in the airport with 50 pounds of pot. I got in front of the judge, and the judge says to me, man, you went to private school. You had good parents. Your last name is Champion. What the hell are you doing here? And like all of us, when we were in our disease, Christine, I said these 3 words: I don't know.
Exactly.
And Christine, I didn't know because the sober Gregg you know here today has no idea who that guy was back then. But the drunk drug addict, Gregg, he doesn't know because he's in such a fog. And here's what the judge says to me. He says, Mr. Champion, here's what I do know. If I see you in my courtroom in the next 6 months, I'm going to give you the 5 years hanging over your head.
Wow.
Now, Christine, what you don't know is I had beautiful curly blonde hair. I was a really good looking young man. And 5 years in the prison system, I was probably not going to fare well, So, so for a split minute, I thought about that. But then 18 days later, I'm in my little sports car that drugs had bought for me. I've smoked 2 joints. I drank a lot of beer, and I have a couple of bindles of cocaine with me. And what happens is I go to the party of the year where I don't know anybody, but it's the party of the year. I walk in, 10 minutes later, a guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, do you have any coke on you?" "Christine, you're a people pleaser?" "I'm a people pleaser." "Yeah, of course I do. Let's go." We go down the stairs to my little sports car. I grab my Duran Duran CD case, Please don't judge me on my music selection.
Right.
But it's all chopped up. That CD case is all chopped up, right? And I put out 2 lines, right? And guess what he puts out? San Diego Police Department badge.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Oh, my goodness. Right.
So the next morning I wake up, I'm in the fetal position. I'm in a jail cell. It's cold. And I hear this from the corner of the room. "Gregg, there's a better way.
Wow.
Gregg, there's a better way." And I prop myself up and I listen to the voice one more time, and it says, "Call your mother. Call your mother." Now, Christine, anytime you've gotten in trouble, who's the last person you want to call?
Well, my, parents.
Yeah. Right. And so, and again, I had this fantasy that I was a big, bad drug dealer, and I'm calling my mommy,
Right.
But I did call my mom. And here's what she said: "Go to church. Go to church." I said, "Go to church?" She goes, "Yeah, just go to church." And so that was a Sunday morning. That Sunday evening, I went to a Catholic mass. And after the mass at 6:00, the priest says, "Hey, we have confession going on. We have 6 priests. Pick a door, go in there, and confess." And my first alcoholic thought, Christine, is this: I'll go into confession and I can go out tonight.
Man, I know it. I know.
Right? We're wigglers. We're snake salesmen. We'll wiggle, right?
Right.
And so I go in this confession behind door number 2, and there's this beautiful older man with Ronald Reagan hair, lightning blue eyes, and an Irish accent. And he says, "Son, tell me your sins." And I said, "Father, when I smoke a lot of pot, I go to Christmas at my family's house on December 27th. When I drink a lot, I go into bars and I hurt people. When I do cocaine, I date 3 women at the same time, and they have no idea I'm doing that. And when I do all 3 of those things, I fly large amounts of marijuana to the East Coast." And the priest says, "Stop, son." I said, "Why?" He's like, "Do you think you have a problem with drugs and alcohol?" And I said, "No." Right? And then Christine, he gives me that great sponsor look that we all get where we're trying to run bullshit by our sponsor.
Yeah, right.
And so for the first time, I did what I call the AA pause, right? I paused when agitated.
Right.
And I looked him in the eye and I said, "Father, you're the second man in my life to ever ask me that question." And he says, "Who was the first?" I said, "My stepfather." And he goes, "What was your stepfather's name?" I said, "Walt Janicki." Priest reaches across, grabs my hand, pulls me towards him, and goes, "I was Walt Janicki's first sponsor."
Oh my goodness. See the connection? I mean, it's just amazing. Unreal.
And I know we talked about God before we got on this Zoom today, and it's where it ends, it's where it ends, it's where it begins, it's where it flows.
Right.
And so for this young 25-year-old sitting in a confessional, I thought to myself, this is too much of a God shot. This is too much.
Right.
And I said, whatever this guy tells me to do next, I'm going to do. And so I always think about newcomers. Take direction, take direction, take direction.
Exactly.
And so here's what he says to me: "Your sins don't belong here. They belong 4 blocks up at the Alano Cub, and there happens to be a meeting starting at 7:30, and I think you should go."
Exactly right.
So on 11/7/1994, which is my sobriety date, I went to my first AA meeting.
Amazing.
And he gave me his number on a piece of paper. This is before cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And the next morning, I open up the piece of paper and I look at the name, and his name is Father Bill Wilson.
Oh my goodness. Oh, the chills. It just came across my body.
And again, Christine, it's one more time God going, "Hey, listen, because the next time I fuck up, it's not jail. It's a tombstone. It's a tombstone.
He's knocking,
And
right? Are you going to
oh
answer?
yeah, totally. Are you going to walk through the doors I'm showing you? Is what he's telling me.
Right.
And so what happens is that I go see Father Bill, and he says, I'm going to be your sponsor. I said, that's good. I think I need one. But he goes, I want you to do three things. I want you to stop drinking and using. I want you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I want you to take boxing lessons.
There you
Boxing
go.
lessons. Boxing lessons. I'm like, why? You know? And he goes, because when you do the first two, you're going to have so much resentment and anger. You got to put it somewhere. And so, Christine, what I'll tell you is when I'm working with my clients or I'm working with a new sponsee, that's the same thing I tell them. We're not going to drink or use no matter what.
Right.
We're going to do 90 meetings in 90 days, and you're going to do some form of exercise because I need you to sweat it out.
Exactly.
And before I left his office that day, he looks at me and he goes, you look pale, you look white. I said, yeah, I'm facing 5 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, listen, I'm going to make a deal with you. Gregg plus drugs and alcohol equals jail. 8 times. Take drugs and alcohol out of the equation. Okay?
Right.
And I promise you, you'll never go back to jail. So Christine, here's the promise I'm going to make you and make all your listeners. If you take drugs and alcohol out of the equation, whatever jail you have going on, whether it's a bad marriage, a bankruptcy, you and your parents aren't getting along, or jail, right? You will never go back again. So in 26 years, I've been to jail how many times? 0.
There you go. There you go.
And so that's my story. That's my leaping off point for my recovery. And, obviously I have a business background, I have a family background, and you can ask me those questions along there, but I really wanted to share that story with you because when I get to a crossroads where I want to drink or use, or I want to hurt people, or I want to disengage in life, I go back to that story and I get teared up every time because I go, that is such a God shot.
Right.
That changed the course of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do is be able to share this with you and all your listeners to say, hey, be open to the God shots. Have your radar dishes open and listening because they're happening to you every day. And that was the start of my journey 26 years ago. And of course it's had ups and downs,
Right.
That's life. But what the 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous, and other recovery tools have given me is the design for living.
Exactly.
I have a recovery playbook that I can access.
Exactly. So, and first I want to say congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you.
Because you really, really are touching lives today by sharing your truth. The reason why I wanted you to share your story is because I got so much out of it, but just the things that we have gone through that are so similar. I just can't even tell you that when you're talking about God, and please forgive me because I'm going to move this up here. So what it says on the wall is, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. And I'm not going to be ashamed about talking about my God on this podcast. Like I stated, take what you need and leave the rest. But what I will say is there has to be something bigger than you. You have to give it over to something else. Until I found my God, I couldn't find sobriety. I was lonely and fearful and all these things. And when you talk about the knocking, he was knocking. And maybe we don't listen in the beginning, but he was knocking again. Are you hearing me? And just the way that he got to you and changed your life. I want others to know, I want our listeners to know that this is what happens. We call it what? God shots?
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we don't have to be burdened anymore. We give it over to him and he takes it. He takes all the fear. He takes all the resentments. What I do connect with a lot with your story is the perfectionism. And I'm going to bring up perfectionism because it can be very, very detrimental. Like look at me, right? I've got the straight A's. I'm a valedictorian. I played softball. I have to be the best softball player. I'm sitting in the backyard until 9 p.m. hitting off the tee. So I have a better batting average because I was saying, look at me. So I had another, form of an identity crisis, because what happens when
Mm-hmm.
that's taken away from us, though? Okay. If we're saying that's who we are, like I'm that baseball player or that softball player, when that's taken away from us, we really like have that identity crisis. So what we need to do is find who we are really inside. Like I'm kind, I'm giving, and it's not what we do for work. It's important that we help others,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
but it's just knowing who we truly are, and our higher power or God helps us find that and gives us the solution really in
Yeah.
recovery. And
I love that you I love that you brought up the lost identity.
right,
One of the companies that I am part of is Startup Recovery, which is
right,
a transitional living that does coaching and has sober mentors. And we've had a lot of success here in California and throughout the nation. But our tagline is shifting addiction to passion.
okay,
And you brought up the lost identity, and I think so many people lose their identity in a couple of ways. One is we have the lost identity athlete, right?
right,
This person's a Division I athlete. They don't get drafted, and all of a sudden, wait, what's my identity now?
right,
Well, and there goes the identity, and there's a big open hole that they fill with drugs and alcohol.
exactly,
Right? That's to your point.
yes,
Another one is an empty nester. You know, I can't tell you how many 45, 50, 55-year-old women end up at my doorstep going, well, my kids are off in college and I've lost my identity as a mother. I don't know what to do with myself.
right,
And we help them push the reset button and say, hey, let's go back and get your master's. Let's
yeah,
go back and do this. Let's have you write that book that you never did. And by the way, you did write a book. Kudos on you, right? Because a lot of us, I have to give you kudos. Christine, I wrote a book too. I'm the only one when I was 14 years old, I go, hey, I'm going to write a book someday. And I think you were the same way. And you did that. And I did that. It takes a lot to write a book,
yes, it does.
right?
Journey,
But
yeah,
it's a journey. And one of the things we do at Startup Recovery is we have a bunch of plays that we do. We have the 10 intentions. We have the backpack of shame. We have the right to write. And the right to write's an exercise. Hey, we're going to write your life story. And here's what you're going to do. And we outline it for them. And I say this to you because part of Startup Recovery is another part called the Recovery Playbook. And
okay,
that is online. You can get that today.
oh,
And
definitely,
I just want to say, it's 12 plays that allow your audience in any part of recovery. And here's the best part. I'm
right,
sober. Now what?
right,
Right? Because what we lose in our disease is life skills, right?
definitely. We
Life
do,
skills. So what I've tried to do in my 26 years of sobriety is take all this stuff that I've learned along the way and put it in a curriculum that people can access and go, okay, I'm sober now. I got 90 days. How am I going to improve my life so I don't have to go back to drugs and alcohol?
okay,
And to your point, what I like about what you've done with a podcast and your own sobriety and writing a book, I mean, that's a journey in itself.
it really is.
Yeah, right?
And I didn't write it. I can't take credit for writing it.
Who
I mean,
wrote
I
it?
didn't write like that. I did not write that book. My God wrote that book. He's
Amen.
using
You were
both
a
of us.
channel. You
If
were
you
a
think about
channel.
it,
You were a
yes, he's
channel.
using both of us right now. We're just a vessel for him,
Yep.
right? So he's
Yes.
speaking through us. Like, I don't talk like this.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not saying I don't have any confidence or anything, but he gives me all of this. It's all the glories to him.
Yep.
So he worked through both of us
Yep.
to get the wording on in a book, and it's helping others. And our mission really in our life is to help others, isn't it, Greg? I mean,
Can I tell you a story about so you talk about perfectionism,
yes,
okay? As you know, my last name is Champion,
I love it.
okay? Okay. Now imagine trying to live up to that name every day.
I know it. Wow.
Okay? It's impossible. Okay?
Right.
Now here's the gift is for a large part of my life, I was trying to be. So if you look up the Webster's Dictionary of Champion, there's two definitions. One is winner, leader of the pack, right? All that stuff that we know what a champion is, right?
Right.
And then once I started working with people in recovery and I started helping them,
Yeah.
I went and revisited what the definition is. And the second definition is someone who champions a cause or mentors.
Love it.
So in my second life as someone in recovery who's helping others, that is who I am. I am the champion.
You are.
And so my it factor is my last name, but not for the first definition, but for the second definition, that I champion your cause and that I mentor others and that I'm in the flow of mutual success.
Well, you're truly a blessing. And I can guarantee that you've touched many, many lives, you know, and it's just does. Okay. So I wanted to ask you this. Is there nothing better and no amount of money or anything than we call it the psychic change. When we see that light go on in somebody, when they're in treatment, there's nothing better in the world to me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that tops that.
When I'll tell you what, here's where I tear up. When I am asked to give someone a year cake.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, it's not as much as I was in the room when my babies were born, right? That's the biggest God. That's the closest I've been to God ever. Those 2 times, 2 daughters. But when I'm giving someone a year cake, I feel so much emotion because I saw their day 1 and now I'm seeing their day 365.
It's amazing.
And right? I mean, and I become part of these people's lives. I go to their weddings. I go to their birthdays. I see their kids being born. And it's like, we're in the middle of the boat. We're all rowing, right? And God's the rudder. God's the rudder.
Yeah, I love that. So can I ask you what motivated you to start the treatment center?
Yeah. So we're not a treatment center. We don't have the 4 walls and no phones. Yeah. We're a high-end sober living that we like to call a transformational living.
Right.
And the reason being is we allow for a clinical component to be attached to it through an intensive outpatient program. Right. I coach every one of our clients in my recovery coaching, so they get the Recovery Playbook.
Amazing.
We also attach a sober mentor to each one of our residents, someone with long-term sobriety and long-term success. So that's the secret sauce. But how did I get into it? It's another God shot. I'm speaking at an AA meeting from the podium, and I'm saying, hey, I got sober at 25. I've mentored another 100 kids. I've taught entrepreneurship at USC. Wow. And this woman comes up to me and goes, you would make a great group facilitator. This is 5 years ago. Wow. Now, Christine, I get my phone out and put in group facilitator. I don't even know what it is.
Right.
And 5 years later, now I'm a founder of one of the top programs in the country. And what I can say to you is what I did was I brought at her facility, I took entrepreneurship, right? The spirit of entrepreneurship along with recovery. And that's what I helped her clients with. And out of doing that legwork, I began to build out a curriculum, a coaching business, and eventually a business between startup recovery and the Recovery Playbook. So it really was this little woman like Yoda. She comes up to me, she sees that I'm a young Jedi, and she starts, come with me, son. And I just took direction from her. And again, the door opened up, said, Gregg, you're going to leave your old business and you're going to go do this. And I'm telling you, it's just like, it's not about the money. It's about the tears I have when I see somebody get 30 days, 60 days, a year. That's what it's about. It's when I see families come back together, right? When I see a mother write me an email saying my son has completely changed, or I get an email from a father saying my daughter is getting married and no one was going to marry her 3 years ago. You know, it's that's why I do what I do. And here's why I do what I do, because someone did it for me.
That's exactly right. So we're giving back what was given to us. Yes. Freely given to us.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. And we are rooted in the 12 steps. Our business is rooted in the 12 steps. And yes, we bring on other stuff, but our clients are required to get a sponsor, have a home group, right? Take a commitment. All the fundamentals that you and I grew up on.
Well, the secret sauce, though, you're mentioning, having somebody walk alongside of you. I took a recovery coaching class and got certified for that. And I'll tell you what, I have a background in substance abuse counseling. So when I went to do that, it was hard for me to get my frame of mind and change it. That everybody's recovery is different. You're meeting that person where they're at. It's not counseling. at all.
No.
It's the support network that you're giving
Mm-hmm.
them. You're walking alongside them. You're of course giving your recovery and helping them. But that's why I want to mention all these different types of recovery, because everybody's recovery is different.
Mm-hmm.
And recovery coaching is extremely successful.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe in it. So I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that you're doing that.
So, I gave you my chocolate chip cookie analogy, right? Another way to look at it is if we were building a train, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden, your first 3 cars are the big book, a sponsor, and a home group, right?
Mm-hmm.
My first 3 cars are a good therapist, a home group, right? And the 12 steps.
Okay.
But eventually, as the cars are built out, we're still going to have the same tools.
Yeah.
We're still going to have the same tools. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a young man who stayed with us 2 years ago.
Okay.
23 years old, was suicidal. His
Mm-hmm.
father said to me, "Hey, can you take a look at my son?" I said, "I'm going to take a hike with him." I took a hike with him for an hour. And I said, "Hey, why don't you stay with us for 90 days? He's like, "Look, I don't think I'm a drug addict and alcoholic." I said, "I will know that in the first 10 to 14 days.
Okay.
Okay. So within 10 to 14 days, I put him on my couch and I go, "Yeah, it's not powerless over drugs and alcohol. It's powerless over childhood trauma. And my life has become unmanageable."
Yes.
And he tears up and he goes, "Yes." And I go, "Why don't you stay with me for 90 days? And why don't we work on that using trauma as your powerlessness and your unmanageability and work the steps through that?" And what came out of that was the young man did get a year of sobriety,
Amazing.
right? He has a part-time job as a coder.
Okay.
He teaches surf lessons.
Wow.
And he also took up jujitsu. Okay. And so these 3 things were not available to him until he got sober. Now, I will be honest with you. He smokes a joint before he goes surfing, right? But guess what? He loves his family. His dad sings my praises because guess what? His son's not suicidal anymore.
Right.
Because he did the work around his trauma. He also went to outside therapy because it's that too. But it was me recognizing it's not drugs or alcohol, it's trauma.
It is.
And so you see my point is I want to get to that root cause, right? So I will tell you this, Christine, drugs and alcohol is not the problem. It's the solution. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I want to share this because I want others to, again, not feel that they're not alone and they may connect with this. In my book, I speak of, I did have childhood trauma. So the drugs and alcohol were just numbing how I felt. And, when that was all taken away, and we state like, okay, we may think like, okay, suddenly, we take drugs and alcohol out of our part of our story, right? But then that's when the work begins, right?
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part for me, was recognizing that was not my fault. Okay. And all the anger and resentment that came with that, and the using, because I didn't know how to live life. I did feel like it was my fault. And there's so many of us that have that trauma in our lives, and we are just, numbing ourselves because it's just painful. It's a painful part of our story.
So I had a God shot happen to me. So I go to a men's stag 4 days a week, just to kind of show you that here I am with 26 years and I still go to 4 meetings a week. Mm-hmm. So anybody listening, if you want to know how to do it, that's how you do it.
That is how you do it.
And there was a man a very proud Italian man, share about some childhood trauma regarding his childhood and how another man took advantage of him as a kid, right? And he cried during the share. And I always say this, Christine, about sharing. When we put our hands in the air, one of 2 things is going to happen. Right. My pain is going to be cut in half, or I'm going to double my joy. Right?
There you go. And it's no longer secret, right?
So in this man's case, and I know this man's case, he shared his secret in a room full of 35 men on Zoom.
Wow.
And he began to weep, right?
Right.
And what I did is I texted him and I go, "Me too."
Wow. And he didn't feel alone,
Oh my God. And what I said to him, I said, "You just helped so many men in that room today, because guess what? there's 2 or 3 other men who haven't shared that yet. And that's it. That's it. Those 2 words, me too,
Yeah.
are words that can bring us together to say, you're not alone, you know? And if you had childhood trauma, Christine, and I had childhood trauma, you and we're simpatico. We understand it. We don't have to go into it, right? But we just, I get you, you get me, let's go.
Yeah. And, you know, I consider you family. I really do. And I just think like, and when we share our truth and that secret, you know, that secrets keep us sick. You know, you really.
Oh yeah, we're only as sick as our secrets.
Well, exactly. And when I told, I think there was just such a healing process when I wrote the book, because I was no longer like, okay, holding these secrets because of my family, you know, and I didn't realize, you know, the journey in that and the healing in that happened, but it was finally out. I no longer have to hold this anymore. You know, I no longer have to hold this burden.
And Christine, it works for people that are not drug addicts or alcoholics. And I'll simply say this: we as human beings are as sick as our secrets.
We are.
Okay, so if you're hiding money because you have a gambling problem, that's a secret.
Right.
If you are eating and binging, right, that's a secret.
Yes.
If you're having an affair, that's a secret. Okay, and guess what? That will wear you down until there's a breaking point. And guess what? You will end up losing everything you want to keep because of it. And it's not like addicts and alcoholics not to move on to something else addictively.
Oh,
you know,
cross addiction that happens.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
You know, like
what have you seen in your years of cross addiction?
Oh my goodness, the shopping, which, you know, then in turn in my book you'll see that's the shoplifting. It's terrible. It was even work. It was school. It comes in so many forms. And now a lot of people are getting into, it's actually putting in our books for addiction counseling, is technology is, and gaming, right? That's another one that people don't realize. It becomes an addiction. And so many things that I cross addicted to. Relationships. There's just so many, there's too many to count and think of. But, you know, again, when the drugs and alcohol are taken away, oh, well, look, here's me. I got to work on me.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you know, going and working a program, and everybody's program is different.
Yep.
Then you are going to go to something else. You are going to seek something else to occupy your time. What I love about your story, you are mentioning passion, okay? So with the drugs and alcohol gone, you're replacing it with a passion. What do you love to do? Like you stated, are you going to go to school? The gentleman that surfs, you taking boxing, all these things, it replaces the emptiness. And okay, so here's one thing I want to bring up that is vital, and I've taught this, is boredom. How much trouble can we get in when we're bored, right? And so the passion replaces all that, you know.
Can I tell you something? So one day I'm in an AA meeting, and I sit down next to this old timer.
Yeah.
And he goes, how's life going? And this is only maybe 6 years ago. And I go, I'm bored. And he looks over at me and goes, yeah, because you're. He goes, yeah, because you're boring.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And at first I took offense, but then I realized I am boring. I'm not doing anything of passion. I haven't rediscovered any joy. And I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't working at it. And so what I want to say is that as part of my recovery is I now do breath work. I do sound bath. I did take up surfing this year, you know, and so the point is, what that old man was trying to tell me was, hey, you need to rediscover joy through action.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, Christine, I'm never going to drink or use again. The obsession to drink and use has left.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
Yes.
But the obsession to obsess has not.
Exactly. And that's what happens in our brain. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Does, you know, and it's spinning really fast, right? We got to, that passion helps slow it down. It helps us focus, whether you're doing meditation, breathing, Yoga has been just an amazing thing for me. It's slowed me down long enough.
Good.
I'm in
Yeah.
the and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's so healing.
And what allows also physicality wise, it releases the endorphins that drugs and alcohol used to.
Exactly. So you know about the neurotransmitters and the serotonin.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to get
Yep.
all technical,
Yep.
but I, with being addicted to pills, took all the dopamine out of my system, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nothing, I couldn't get it out any other way. So I started to run. And when they say that runner's high, there is nothing like it.
Mm.
I was pushing my body and I was saying, I'm going to get this out. I've got to find a way. And the running finally started releasing the dopamine in my brain that I didn't need drugs or alcohol anymore. And it was just, it's an amazing thing. Running is a beautiful thing too.
Yeah. I have a guy in my home group who runs marathons, and
Oh my God.
he has reached 10 years of sobriety,
Yeah.
and that truly is his addiction. He can't stop running. You know, he's Forrest Gump.
There you go. And that's a healthy, really addiction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So just that you're showing people passion.
Well, and let me tell you a little bit about another word for passion I also feel is joy. And when I'm working with others, I will say, hey, when did you start drinking or using? And for most of us, we started drinking around 13, 14 years old. And so I'll say, what'd you do for joy when you were 10 or 11 or 12 years old? And they'll say, well, I ice skated, or I played the piano, or I did ballet, or I surfed. I said, well, guess what? You're going to start ice skating. You're going to start playing the piano. You're going to start doing ballet. And well, I'm 50 years old. It doesn't matter. Because here's why. When I was a kid, here's my three joys: body surfing, skateboarding, and mint chocolate chip ice cream from Baskin Robbins.
No, you did not just say that.
Yes.
Hot shot right there. That's my favorite ice cream.
It's America's favorite flavor. It's America's favorite flavor. So what I want to tell you, and this is the God honest truth, Christine, and please, this is for your listeners, is that guess what? I body surf. I ride skateboards with both my daughters. And last night I got report cards from my girls, straight A's. So I took them out for Baskin Robbins, to which I had mint chocolate chip ice cream. Right?
Yeah, I love it.
And so that's what we do. We got to return back to that child. Remember the child that was hurt?
Yeah.
Well, he or she wasn't hurt. He or she was not hurt all the time.
Right.
They did have joy. So go get those joys that are for free, for fun and for free. And so skateboarding and body surfing and ice cream, they're all for free. Go enjoy.
And isn't it wonderful? Do you ever look at your daughters and they remind you? It's such a gift. They remind you about simplicity, just to stop and pause. And you look in their eyes and they're grateful. Like when they're eating their ice cream, I'm sure you've seen them, and they're just the joy that comes out of them. Or the joy, here's the joy they get, I'll bet.
Well, Christine, here's how I know they're my kids.
Yeah.
Their favorite flavor, mint chocolate chip ice cream. So, I've had some influence on them,
Yeah.
So,
I can imagine the joy that you have, because I bet you there's no better joy than being a father.
Oh, it's the greatest joy I've ever felt was those two mornings when they were born. I have healed my own childhood scars by being a father, right? I know that they love me. I'm the first man they're ever going to love. So I hope that I'm an example of a man that when it comes to dating or having a boyfriend or getting married, that they have a good example around that. Right. And most of all, I've been a sober dad.
That's what I was going to mention. They never have to see you drinking.
Amen. Ever. And the chaos and the disappointment and the shame, they will never see any of that stuff.
Never.
Yep.
It's such a gift.
Yep.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, and thank you for being part of the family now, right?
Yeah. Well, I say I have a mantra, and you definitely belong to this: good people know good people.
Oh, I so agree with that. But you're a true blessing, and I know our listeners are going to get so much out of this. And I just thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
My pleasure, Christine. You are a delight. You're an angel, and I love being on the Recovery Zone podcast. I'm going to buy a couple of your books for my clients, put them on our bookshelf, and say that I met this wonderful woman over the weekend. She's got an incredible story, and her story will help you.
Well, I'm so grateful for that, because they're going to get a lot of, and they're going to see a lot of the behaviors that come with it and the cross addiction that comes with it, but also the childhood trauma.
Yeah.
It all began. Why am I using?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So bless you, bless your family.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And if I don't talk to you or before the holidays, have a Merry Christmas. And I'm sure we'll cross paths in person at some point.
I know it. I want to come surfing.
Yes. You're
I'm
welcome
thinking about
anytime.
surfing right now.
Yeah. You're welcome
Thank you
anytime.
so much, Greg.
Okay. All right. My pleasure.